Tonight on News at 9, the Cabinet and its expenses. Government presents a fresh supplementary estimate to purchase vehicles and for other expenses.
First at 9, this is Other Derana 24/7.
Also making headlines tonight, business intimidation. Pan Asia Bank treasurer accuses former director of Perpetual Treasuries Arjun Aloysius of intimidation prior to testifying before the Commission of Inquiry. Umar oil controversy, contradicting views on the matter, drilling halted. Meeting the chief prelates. Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa meets the Mahanayakas today. And making international headlines, Trump and Putin. US President Donald Trump meets Russian President Vladimir Putin in the sidelines of the G20 summit. Live across Sri Lanka, this is Other Derana 24/7. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Tonight we begin in the Parliament, where the Chief Government Whip Gayantha Karunathilaka presented government supplementary estimate today. The estimate seeks approval for expenses for several ministries, army and provincial councils. It estimates that the expenditure allocated for vehicle and residential renovations of parliamentarians will amount to over 190 million rupees.
Under the President's Office, additional allocations have been provided to settle the expenditure of lease rentals of vehicles provided for the use of project directors and purchase of a three-wheeler. Supplementary allocations have also been provided for the purchase of a security backup vehicle for the Minister of Foreign Affairs and vehicles for Sri Lanka missions abroad. Other vehicle purchases are also included for the use of Deputy Minister of MAHAWELI Development and Environment, the Minister of Post, Postal Services and Muslim Religious Affairs, and Governor of the Northern Provincial Council. Supplementary allocations are also made for expenditure on vehicle lease rentals at the Ministry of Social Empowerment and Welfare as well as the Ministry of Plantation Industries. Thereby, the total allocated for the purchase of vehicles and settlement of lease rentals under the operational leasing methods amount to over 114 million rupees. The supplementary estimates also include estimates for renovations of official residences for the Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government, Minister of Rural Development, as well as for the purchase of an air conditioner for the Minister of Skills Development and Vocational Training. Thereby, the total amount allocated for this purpose amounts to over 40 million rupees.
When we look at supplementary allocation, funds have been segregated for the renovation of ministers' houses. The procurement of 2 vehicles for ministers is over 125 million rupees. Isn't there more than enough vehicles for ministers? We saw ministers purchasing vehicles in the last government. There were 110 MPs back then, so the vehicles should still be at the ministries.
There are 225 MPs in Parliament and 10 were absent. When I was watching Derana in the morning, they said that millions are being spent on the Parliament, but there are many who do not attend Parliament. Deputy General Manager of the Treasury Department at Pan Asia Banking Corporation, Aruna Benedict Dias, alleged today that the former director of Perpetual Treasuries, Arjun Aloysius, continually attempted to influence him prior to testifying before the Commission of Inquiry to probe the controversial bond issuance. Testifying for the second day, the treasurer noted that he was approached through several intimidating phone calls over WhatsApp mobile application and meetings in the recent past. Meanwhile, Commission member Justice Prasanna Jayawardena directed Acting Attorney General Dapula de Oliveira to take action over the intimidating phone calls if necessary.
Aruna Dias, who appeared before the Commission for the second day, was asked by Deputy Solicitor General Milinda Gunathilaka to explain when he first met Arjun Aloysius. In response, he said it was during a meeting in June 2015, adding that Arjun Aloysius and the CEO of Perpetual Treasuries, Kasun Palisena, had asked him to act as an intermediary for bond auctions. Aruna Dias further said that between the period February 2015 and March 2016, Kasun Palisena called him whenever they failed to act as an intermediary and insisted it should not happen again. Responding to questions raised by Deputy Solicitor General Milinda Gunathilaka, he also revealed that during a meeting on 3rd of April 2016, Arjun Aloysius insisted that he release funds of the Pan Asia Bank to the central bank to get the required liquidity. Aruna Dias added that he vehemently opposed the request on the basis of putting the bank at risk. Aruna Dias went on to say that following a news broadcast on Pan Asia Bank acting as an intermediary, Arjun Aloysius personally told him, quote, "The next 2 weeks are crucial and we need your support," unquote. He also revealed that Arjun Aloysius repeatedly called him an assured job security and he wanted to stop him from revealing the truth before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry.
Yesterday, the Monetary Board of the Central Bank suspended perpetual treasuries from carrying on the business and activities of a primary dealer for a period of 6 months. Now, today, politicians expressed their views on the Central Bank's suspension of perpetual treasuries. Perpetual treasuries has started newspapers, televisions and radio businesses. It is good that it was suspended because they must have stolen a lot. It will be better if government takes over their media network as it was established with stolen money. Courts and the public service was given power through independent commissions. We don't criticize decisions they make independently. This is not a political issue. It was the case in the past. It was the president who made such decisions in the past, but that culture has changed. In other local stories, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that he is prepared to accept the public consent even if they reject the proposed new constitution. He made these remarks at an event held in Mana today. War started because of terrorism, which was caused by extremism. We have to work towards reconciliation. We are proposing a new constitution to find political solution for these issues. There's an operation committee for this. We are yet to publish a report. However, there are 6 subcommittee reports. We will first create a dialogue regarding this matter throughout the country. We will consider all aspects related to this dialogue and then compile a final report. It's only then that we are going to draft the bill. If the public is going to say no to this, then we will accept it because it was them who gave us the mandate. In one of our headline stories, the government decided to temporarily suspend excavation at the MAHAWELI multipurpose development project owing to the prevalent underground water leakage. Releasing a communique, the Ministry of MAHAWELI Development and Environment said that the decision was taken following a discussion held on the subject under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena.
In its communique, the ministry further noted that steps have been taken to immediately allocate 300 million rupees to the Badulla District Secretariat to provide compensation to those affected by the MAHAWELI project. The President has already taken measures to appoint a parliamentary select committee to look into the issues surrounding it. Meanwhile, in a media briefing held in Colombo today, the State Minister of MAHAWELI Development, Mahinda Amaraveera, touched on the temporary suspension of the MAHAWELI multipurpose development project.
The President is of the stance that amidst every obstacle, the government should shoulder the responsibility of the damages caused to the area due to the project, and maximum relief should be given to those affected. We have identified the area as an affected area. Excavations are done from both ends of the tunnel. We have immediately stopped the machine at one end. The other machine will also be stopped when it reaches the risk zone. We will start the project once the issues are rectified.
The minister also touched on the number of houses affected.
Various people say that 7,500 houses have been damaged. Reports received by us say the number of houses deemed unsuitable for habitation stands at 52. There are issues pertaining to the company undertaking the project. We've been told the company Farab is undertaking a project of this nature for the first time.
Meanwhile, Minister of Telecommunication and Digital Infrastructure Harin Fernando also elaborated on the MAHAWELI issue at a media briefing held at the United National Party headquarters in Sirikota today.
I'm happy about the state of issues surrounding MAHAWELI at present. If someone says that no compensation was given, it is an utter lie. But there were shortcomings in payments. I was also frustrated, not with the President and the Prime Minister, but because of the bureaucracy. It was continuously told that only 16% of the project was completed in 2015 and the project reached 77% completion under the present government. It's not true. The tunnel is 15 kilometers in length. 4.1 kilometers was already drilled at the time. When the project manager was inquired by the president on the matter, he said 48% of the tunnel was already built.
The Government Medical Officers Association says it will join fellow trade unions in drawing international attention to the CITEM issue as a recent crackdown on student protesters. Speaking at a media briefing today, Assistant Secretary of the GMOA, Dr. Naveen D'Souza, also expressed disapproval over alleged objections raised by the Attorney General's Department against the GMOA's intervention in the Supreme Court case on CITEM. The remark follows the Supreme Court taking up the case yesterday with the representation of the GMOA.
Our legal team very clearly stated CITEM issue mainly affected to the health of the public. So the GMA has a right to intervene in this case. But Attorney General's Department very clearly representing the Minister of Health put their objections standing with CITEM to stop our interventions. But the Supreme Court very clearly said in their judgment, GMA should be accepted as an intervention party. Yesterday there was a joint trade union meeting chaired by the GMA secretary. They unanimously decided to go for a campaign to the all embassies regarding the harassments to the students and breaching all the universal norms. So I think it will be happen on next week.
There's an expression for that. Washing dirty laundry in public.
No, the thing is this, our minister should stand with the correct universal norm. No, we have to go to the international community and the other means to anyway we have to establish the universal norm here.
Welcome back, everyone. Anunaka of the Malwathu chapter, Venerable Dimbul Kumbara Vimala Dharmathera, expressed disappointment over fund allocations for ministers' expenses, while many food and floods and landslide victims are still living in makeshift shelters. He made these remarks during a cordial discussions with the former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa today.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa engaged in religious observances at the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy today. He then met with the Chief Prelate of the Asgiri chapter, Most Venerable Warakagoda Sri Nana Ratanathera, and the Chief Prelate of the Malwatha chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera. He was then seen having cordial discussions with the Anunayaka Theras of Malwatha chapter, Venerable Niyangoda Vijita Siri Thera and Venerable Dimbul Kumbure Vimala Dhamma Thera.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුව තිරපත් කරලා තියෙනවා මේ මැටි ඇමතිවරුන්ට වාහන අලුතෙන් ගෙන්නනවා. මැටි ඇමතිවරුන්ගේ ගෙවල් ටික නවීකරණය කරන්න. මාවනල්ලි නායකගේ ඒවා තියෙනවා. මුගදේ කුඩාරම් වල අම්මතුලින් විනාශ වුණා. ඒවා ගැන බලන්න නැතුව වෙනම දේවල් කිරීම පිළිබඳව අපේ කනගාටුව ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
After these discussions with the Mahasangha, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa expressed views to media.
I usually don't talk about politics with the chief prelates, but I have to talk to them when I am being treated unfairly. The war was not there only during the last 5 years. It was there when other presidents were in power. So is it the army that managed to end the war that have done all sorts of wrong things?
වැරදි කළා තියෙන්නේ. ව්‍යවස්ථා අපි ඒකට නම් විරුද්ධයි. ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් වැඩක් නැහැ නේ සංශෝධනය.
Let's move on to international news now. US President Donald Trump and Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin met face-to-face for the first time today in a highly anticipated meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit in the city of Hamburg in Germany. The two leaders have speaked out opposing views on major international issues in the run-up to the summit, including climate change, Ukraine and Syria.
US President Donald Trump and Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin say they want to repair ties damaged by crisis, including Russia's alleged meddling in the US election and Russia's actions in Syria and Ukraine. Speaking in Warsaw yesterday, Trump urged Russia to stop destabilizing activities and end its support for Syria and Iran. Meanwhile, mass protests were held in Hamburg, with clashes between police and demonstrators leaving dozens injured.
Let's get reaction to that story and other world affairs. Joining me live from the newsroom is Derana's Chief International Affairs Analyst, Anuradha Herath. Anuradha, thank you very much once again for joining us. In the beginning of the week, we were talking about the G20 summit and Putin that was supposed to meet with US President Donald Trump. Now, the G20 summit, even in the past, whether it was held in the United Kingdom, in France, in Brazil, even in Japan, it attracts massive amount of protest. Now, what is the main reason that they are protesting?
So as you said, we've always seen protests at G20 summits. Most of them are anti-capitalist protests, with people believing that the G20, which was really created as an organization which was created to help the people of the world, aren't really doing their job. You know, globalization was thought to have, help people across the world attend to these peace issues and things like that, but that, they've really fallen short. So that's what's really causing protests year after year. But in this particular protests of this year, which have turned violent, we've seen violent protests, if you remember back in 2009 and 2010 were particularly violent, but this year's protests are really fueled by issues of climate change. And that's going to be interesting because President Trump, as you know, has pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement. So it's going to be really interesting to see how discussions pertaining to climate change will go on at this particular meeting.
Well, so the main event of the day that the whole world was keeping a close watch was the meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. They informally met for the first time today. It was just a small handshake and pat on the back. Is that it? It doesn't seem much.
Well, I think as we're speaking, the other more substantive meeting is taking place. We don't know what the results of that meeting are at this particular time. We'll probably know in maybe a couple of hours or so. But usually what they'll do is, when these high-level meetings take place, they'll do a photo op and journalists try to ask questions. But of course, they give very vague and general answers. And I think the mood, judging by those answers, it was positive. Both sides, both President Trump and Vladimir Putin, saying that they're looking forward to having talks, having fruitful talks, and that the mood was a little bit, it was good, saying that they've talked on the phone and they hope to take things forward. What will be interesting is to see what official statements come from both sides, because typically you find that the two sides agree on what to release and what not to release, and they release statements along the same lines. But if you remember when President Trump met the Russian ambassador in the U.S., that's not exactly what happened. What was released was not what was expected from the Trump side of the issue. So it'll be interesting to see whether there'll be sort of these similar statements issued, or whether there'll be a drastic difference between the messages that are issued from both sides.
Indeed, we will certainly have a close watch on that and report to our viewers as and when we get that information. So since I have you, I want to get your take on another story that made headwaves yesterday. Take a look at this picture. Now, if you are a fan of aviation, then the name Amelia Earhart is indeed a well-known figure. She's the first female pilot to cross the Atlantic back in the 1930s when aviation was in its infancy. Now the story goes that she appeared from the face of the earth, disappeared rather from the face of the earth. Still a mystery to many as to what happened to her. This picture is, however, trying to change that. What is the story behind that, Anuradha?
So it's nice to finally talk about something non-political for a change. As you said, her going missing has always been a heavy controversial issue at this point. Nobody really knows exactly what happened to her. There has been lots of speculation, but these images are claiming to say that the lady in the background and one of the men in the foreground is actually Amelia Earhart and her navigator. So there are people contesting this, saying, no, that's really ridiculous, you can't really tell who that is. But one side of the argument is really saying that they did land and they were alive, not that they crash landed and died, and that they were held captive by the Japanese and somehow died in captivity. But like it's difficult to say, right, with a photograph. So I think the controversy is not going to be at rest. It's just going to continue.
It's indeed, one of the things that they will be continuing to figure out is whether is this picture authentic, and try to whether understand exactly did she die or did she really disappear from the face of the earth. Anuradha Herath, Chief International Affairs Analyst of Derana, thank you very much once again for joining us. We'll see you soon. Let's move on to business news. A recent review on Sri Lanka's capital market regulatory framework reveals that the island will be challenged in building deep and liquid capital markets. The report by the International Organization of Securities Commissions highlighted that market capitalization and the value of market turnover have fluctuated between 25% and 30% of GDP in recent years, significantly less than other jurisdictions in the region. The report added that there is a lack of independence of the Securities Exchange Commission from political interference and its decision and day-to-day operations. The organization recommends that if the country is to build a capital market and it aspires, investors' trust must be developed and confidence was needed through a sound and robust regulatory framework both in capital market design and operation. Also in business news, data released by the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority show that tourist arrivals rose 4.5% year-on-year in June, amounting to 123,351 visitors to Sri Lanka. With the latest statistics, Sri Lanka has received over 1 million tourists within the first half of this year. Accordingly, tourist arrivals have risen 4% in the first 6 months of this year compared to the same period last year. India continued to be Sri Lanka's largest market, amounting to 170,000 arrivals, followed by China, numbering over 130,000 visitors. Let's take you to the stock market now. Colombo Bourse continued the positive momentum for the second straight session, supported by foreign inflows of 180 million rupees. The ASPI closed at 6,737.50 with a gain of 23.16, while the S&P SL20 index inclined 3.49 to close at 3,908.94. Market turnover was around 940 million rupees. And now we have RM Sivanandam from the Colombo Bourse with today's market update.
The market capitalization at the end of the day was 3,055.78 billion rupees. Top 5 gainers of the day were Blue Diamonds Non-Boating, Lucky Lanka Non-Boating, Tabraven Holdings, Richard Petties and Malayan Pips. While the top 5 losers were Singh Hospitals, Dolphin Hotels, Anilana Hotels, Asia Asset Finance and Fortress Resorts.
On to sports news now. Nadisha Dilhani Lekamge won a silver medal in women's javelin throw at the 22nd Asian Athletic Championship yesterday, clinching the first medal for Sri Lanka at the Games in India.
Nadisha Dilhani recorded a personal best of 58.11 meters, securing the silver medal for the country. Technical officials were highly criticized by the commentators yesterday over their errors. The semi-final was rerun as some of the competitors protested as the starting gunshot was fired twice during the men's 400-meter sprint and the official failed to recall the runners to the starting line. In the restart, Sri Lankan sprinter Dilip qualified for the finals. Meanwhile, in women's 100 meters, Rumeshika Ratnayaka was disqualified from the heats as she made a false start. The surprising factor was a Qatari sprinter was excused from a false start during the 100-meter heats.
A bit of cricket news now. West Indies crashed to a fourth straight defeat yesterday in the ICC Women's World Cup after being thrashed by 8 wickets by New Zealand at Taunton, England. The win elevates New Zealand to the fourth in the points table, with West Indies women lying at the bottom. Batting first, West Indies women only managed 150 runs all out with 7 overs to spare. Knight chipped in with the only noteworthy contribution with her knock of 40 of 60 deliveries. Lei Tahu and Lei Kaspek were the pick of the bowlers for New Zealand with 3 wickets each. The target of 151 was no match for the Kiwi women as they romped to victory in just 18.2 overs. Opener Rachel Priest led the platform for the win with a brilliant 90, with her opening partner Susie Bates chipping in with 40.
Both players moving across the crease to is the end.
Let's now cross over to the Weather Centre where other Derana's Katharina Chang is standing by with tomorrow's forecast.
A very good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now if we look at the map, we can expect a change in the prevailing weather condition in the southwest region. Now we can see a formation of a low pressure zone, particularly in the southwest part of the island, bringing heavy rains and thunder showers in the western, central provinces as well as the Batticaloa and Kamuni areas. Now moving towards the northern part of the island, we can expect some dry weather ideal for the weekend. It's now time to take a look at the city-by-city forecast in key cities across the island.
Well, today is Friday and end of your working week. Time for your positive news of the week. It comes from the United States tonight. A story about sweet gesture of a man who wanted to marry his longtime girlfriend. Will Eaton of Indiana proposed to 23-year-old Ashley Shores during an annual family photo shoot, but not before asking her sister, 15-year-old Hannah, to be his best friend forever. When Ashley and her boyfriend Will started dating 7 years ago, she made it very clear that she and Hannah were a package deal since her sister has Down syndrome and diabetes. Ashley was always careful to make sure that her sister felt included while they were growing up. Ashley is prepared to take over as Hannah's legal guardian when their parents aren't fit to care for her anymore. So before the Indiana-based boyfriend popped the question to Ashley, he first proposed to his sister and asked if she would be his best friend forever. When Hannah said yes, he then turned to Ashley and asked if she would be his wife. Needless to say, she also said yes. Such a sweet story indeed. And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Indiveri Amartha will join tomorrow at 9 with the very latest, and be sure to join her then. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.